Oh boy.
And here we are again with the Old Boy Podcast. I changed the name recently to the Olaf Boy Podcast because I realized that actually it was after watching the podcast of Joe Rogan with Lex Fridman. I think Fridman is his last name. I'm not so sure right now, but that's he's an AI expert and shit like that. He's really great, and I'm sorry, I forgot to drink something before recording. And they were talking about podcasting and that he thanked Joe Rogan for telling him to change the name to his own name. And I was like, you know what, that's a good point. And I listened the other day to Joe Rogan talk with someone else, Adam Curry, about the podcast, about podcasting, and they were talking about how everybody should have a podcast, and that like to some degree made me think of like podcasting as an art form or like a freedom of expressing your own opinion. And I feel like looking at it that way and just looking at it from a perspective of like, wow, I can just express my own opinion, and that's kind of rare, especially in history. And doing it from that perspective and just talking and expressing myself, because that's really what I do as a person a lot. So that's what you can expect of the channel from now on. I'm going to do some more individual podcasts, talking about whatever the fuck I find interesting. And it's just up to you to decide if you like it or not, and if you want to do it, want to keep watching. If you want to have a conversation or something, hit me up, because I'm in for that, but I don't want to like have half-ass conversations. I like having good conversations with people, learning new things. Yeah, like it's just that's what the podcast is going to be about. And I started studying again as a pre-master student at the RUG, University of Groningen. And yeah, I think that's going to be great. I'm going to want to talk a little bit more about what I'm going to learn, things like talking about DSM and disorders, and different difficulties when it comes to these things. But I also really want to talk about some of the politics, because it's very interesting to me that here in the Netherlands, in Europe, I feel like we don't talk a lot about our opinions, especially political, and how we, especially online, or at least maybe we do, but we don't talk about love in the English language. So I noticed that there's not a lot of hype or a lot of information out there about how European people often think, or other people think of America, or like Americans are just fucking obsessed with themselves, and like 80 or 90% of all content created comes from America. So they could kind of get into a loop. So I hope to kind of, give some information. I'm 23 years old. Like, who am I to give opinions about politics, right? And I kind of see that. But fuck it. It's my fucking podcast, my freedom of speech. I'm going to talk about politics. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. That's all fine with me. I just want to learn, So if you think, Olaf, you have a fucking shit opinion, you don't know half the shit, give me the articles that you read, give me the stuff. I want to read it. I want to know what you think. That's just what I'm interested in. I really think this is a new way of being able to learn. I do want to say, like, don't start just trying to explain everything to me. I'm not an idiot, but I do like to learn more, because there are things that I think could be a lot better in the world, and I feel like we're not talking about it enough. Like, for instance, to make it a little bit specific, what I really don't understand with my earlier example is, if you look at Europe, I think that a lot of European countries could argue that they're the greatest country in the world, and a lot of these countries have a social system, a social network of what will happen to you if you have terrible bad luck within your country. And America doesn't have that. America has the American dream. If you fuck up, you fuck up. It's your responsibility. Fuck you. And there are a lot of systems, right? A lot of things I've heard about, like programs, but I've heard a lot of times that those programs are more destructive or more complex than it actually helps sometimes people. And maybe it's because it's a very big country and it becomes harder, especially because of different states, and if probably different states have different different policies as well, and maybe in some states there are better social systems than in other states. But when there's so much talk about racism, the other day I talked with a friend from Saudi Arabia, and he said that he had been a minority all his life, and I said, yeah, me too. And he was like how, and I was like, well, I'm a minority in different ways. Like, First of all, I'm a religious minority, like, or at least I've been raised, atheist, and in the Netherlands, Christianity is still the main thing. So I'm technically a minority, and I am also dyslexic, so I'm also a minority in that. And then it's like, well, that's not the way that he means it. But it's like, okay, what do you mean? And we talked about a lot, and what it really comes down to is feeling a minority. Like you feel like you're a minority. Like you like a lot of people in the Netherlands are minorities here, man. Like if you talk about, especially if you talk about like color and race, like we're a multicultural country of a lot of minority people, but those people don't feel like minorities. They don't feel like they're left behind. They don't feel like they need to fight for their freedoms because they feel like they're equal. They don't notice that they're a minority, so that it doesn't matter to them. And I really believe that's because of the social systems here, and that people, even if you are, a refugee, you can get a job here, you can probably get an education or get some money, and you can probably work your way up. And if you can't at the moment, then you'll probably be able to get some money from the government to still be able to buy food for your family and to be able to take care of them for the time that you need to get back into the working field and to be able to fix yourself. And generally here, I growing up here, I really can't imagine anything else. Like how 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 can you let someone like just just fall like into the madness of the world, like, and being as a society just being like, oh, we're just not gonna care, it's just gonna be fine, that person, his responsibility. And yeah, to some degree, yeah, of course people fuck up, and having such a social system makes you have to pay more taxes and everything. But I don't even know if that's in America necessarily true, because you guys just fuck up your taxes with like half the money goes to the military and everything. But that's the thing, right? Like, it's almost hard to say America, because I'm not saying America, I noticed it, and I should say the USA first of all, because that's, what we're talking about, what I'm trying to talk about, and I need to be more specific with that. And also the different states. I feel like that's just something as a foreigner who tries to understand what's going on in America, because it's such a big country and it takes all the media, because I can't think about anything else anymore. It's really annoying. But that's the way it feels like, at least to me, man. But it's like, it's a main occupation right now, but it's like, it's hard to get it. It's hard to get it. Nobody's actually explaining it online. Nobody's talking about, nobody even like, everybody thinks they get it to some degree, but I'm not getting different states. I'm not getting how different states actually operate and how well they function, and how, what the regulations are and how the rules function. And I don't even know if I talk to some Americans, but I don't feel like Americans are capable of explaining it themselves very well. Like, if you would ask me about the Dutch democratic system and how it actually functions, I would probably be able to explain to you like 60-70% what is not enough. But I feel like Americans are even less than that when I would ask them about the political system. What says a lot, I feel like that's just where like a really big crux is. And I mean, honestly, as a foreigner, it's hard to even, to even be like, yo, like, this is what's wrong, because there's just a lot of things wrong. Like, I watch the NBA a lot. I love basketball all my life, and they were, they're talking about voting and, telling people to vote. And I'm like, yeah, that is important. That I agree, but I don't know how important it is in America, honestly, because it's like, of course, it's important to let your opinion know, but nobody's listening, right? Like, no, that's the point, right? Nobody's listening to the opinions there. Everybody just puts forward like Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. Nobody really picks him, just the Democratic Party. Who the fuck gets to do that? Like, you're not voting. You're just, it's like you go to the store and they're like 2 products, and you get the choice of which product you want. Like, the factory is not asking you, hey, what would you like to have for breakfast? Like, you're not in a restaurant, you're in a store, you have 2 products. You're not going to go to a restaurant and have customer service. And that's the way politics should look like, because you are having a vote. You should have the power. And it's like, in America, people just don't. So I'm like, yeah, go vote. I'm like, yeah, go vote for who? Like, what is your point? Like, you want my opinion to be heard? Like, you think people, their opinions when they vote are kind of going to suck anyways. It's like, that's always the case, right? So I just don't know how America's ended up there. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they don't know a lot about the political system, or maybe because there wasn't a lot of focus on it, or I don't know. It's just very weird, and I'm not saying we do it so much better here, but the fact that my Arabic friend, my Saudi Arabian friend, who always felt like a minority, and now he said it in the Netherlands for the past 4 years, he haven't felt like that. So he's like, I'm a minority here, and I've always been a minority, but here I don't feel that way. That's just such a big difference, right? Like that's what Americans should feel, right? Like, and they don't, and I think it has to do with the social system a lot. Like, I really think that there needs to be a social network, and they talk about UBI, universal basic income, but I have no idea if that is like the solution. Like, maybe for America, it does to me sound like an American solution. Let's just give people money, but and it's equal, like everybody gets it, but is it really handy? And does it also really matter that everybody gets it? Like, can we not just make a norm? Like, come on, like it's not that hard, right? To if you're like have more money than everybody else, come on, like you can just accept the fact that you're not gonna get that money, right? You're not gonna get the €1,000 a month. You're not gonna get it, right? Like, why does everybody? Why does it have to be universal? The fact that you're making it universal makes it so more expensive. It's just like not everybody needs to get €1,000. Like, you don't have to do it that way. I think that that's just such an American extreme thing again. It's such an extreme policy. It's such a like like here in the Netherlands we have an uitkering. I have no idea what the English word for it would be, but I know some of it because my mom used to get it at some point. But it's basically is so she used to work in healthcare, and if you work in healthcare, what they do here in the Netherlands is you get a contract, and it's like a flex contract, and then after a year they can extend it. But there's a law that they can only extend it for, I think, up to 3 years. Maybe they changed it to 2. It was at some point 2 or 3. Like, it changed a little bit, and then you get 2 contracts in a row or 3, and then after that they have to hire you for a longer period of time or not. And what companies regularly do is they don't hire you, then they have to wait for 3 months. They cannot hire you because else they have to hire you, and after 3 months they can hire you again for flex contract. It's really illegal. It's a really stupid law. My mom hated it, we hated it, but it's the way it functions, and it has to do with how to how to actually make sure that healthcare workers get more certainty. But it does the opposite. People are not happy with it generally, I think. But that's another case. But my point with it is that because of it, my mom sometimes didn't have a job for like 3 months, and she could work for another company, but she had to look for a new job, and it always took some time. So very often, for 3 months she had the uitkering. And what is the uitkering? It's your latest salary, and then 70% of that the government gives you. That's the uitkering, and they give that to you for I think 6 to 9 months. Don't quote me on that, because I think it's 6 to 9 months, but I'm not 100% sure. And after that, then there is even another package you can go for. But there are some obligations, like, so for instance, if you get it, you do need every month, every 2 months. I'm not so sure. Again, like, I didn't do it. My mom was busy. I was a bit younger back then, so it's still functional. I think you have to show that you do solicitations at least, I think, twice or 3 times a week. A month, and show them that you're doing it. Maybe it's every 2 months. I'm not 100% sure, but at least you need to show that you're trying to look for a job and you're trying to go back into the working field. So, but you get the money, I think that makes a heck of a lot more sense, like you don't just want to give money without asking anything back. Like, you don't just want to give people money. You do want to have some responsibility towards them, like getting back into the field, right? Like doing work for you, for your company, for whatever, right? For your society, yeah, right? Like, you don't want to just give people money, and I like, if you're gonna give them $1,000, right, a month, then like, depending on where you live in America, like, that the money depends a lot. Like, are you gonna are you gonna change it for like inflation for each region, or like for instance rent inflation, or are you not gonna do that? Like that depends a lot. Is everybody then gonna move to cheaper areas just because they can just live there and not work anymore? Or like there's like so much things that are gonna be involved with it, and I feel like you can just give actually like you could give the €1,000 a month to the people who actually need it, right? Like you can just you say if you earn underneath this amount a month, like we have that actually. Like so, for instance, during the period of time that my mom um, doesn't work, right, and she gets that money, right, anything she earns, right, in that time she needs to declare to the government, and then the government. So if she will get a job, for instance, for only 10 hours, but the previous job paid her more, then she will just earn that money, and the government will give her the difference between her this job and her last job. Yes. um, yes. So in that way, if someone right now in America earns beneath that level, or beneath a certain level, you could say, okay, if you earn beneath that level, we're still going to give you a certain amount of money extra, right? Like to get you going, until you are in. What we want to see back from that is a plan or a situation where we want you to show us that we want to, that you want to go forward and you have a plan for it or something, right? Like it's so obvious. Like I feel like you need to know where to go if you need help, and it shouldn't be a psychologist. It should be low key. It should be able to be your local government. You should be able to walk in there and be like, hey, I need some help, I don't know how to handle stuff. Like that's okay, right? Like people don't have to know everything, and I feel like in America that mentality of like you should know better, you should know better, you should do better, you all the time. Like come on, man. Like people fuck off all the time. People don't know shit. I don't know shit. I fuck up half the time. Everybody fucks up, right? And if you have two children, you're a mom alone, right? And you where do you go? Maybe to your friends, but maybe you barely have friends because maybe you got your kids at a very young age and you've been working all your life. So your friend group, your social circle is minimum, and maybe in your social circle most people are just similar in a similar situation as you. So the advice people give you are just the same shit as you think. So how the fuck do you get out of that? You need some help. You need some help from outside, and I don't think in America people have an option for that. Like that's at least that's not what I'm hearing, and I don't think that this money is gonna solve the problem, and just giving money to people, because like I feel like you're underestimating a lot how much information, and well, maybe because of the internet, just giving money helps because people can just find help online, and maybe that would work, but then why wouldn't you just set up a place online for the whole US where everybody in the US can always ask for an online coaching for free when they are in a certain program or whatever, right? Like and actually training people within that program to actually help people, like, and listen to them. Like I did applied psychology, now I'm doing a clinical psychology masters, and like I had a lot of coaching subjects. Like people just need to learn to listen, and then they can actually help each other, and they really need that. And God, I just don't think they have it in America. I don't think so. Like, I haven't heard people talk about this. And here in the Netherlands, we do a lot of these things. And I feel like we are not, people don't know that. Like, we are like very healthy country. And that's a really big part of it. Like just being able to go somewhere and ask for help. Or we have like, a tremendous amount of coaches here. Like, people who just coach other people, like just, that's their job, to be a coach, not a coach of a team, but a personal trainer coach. We call it a coach because there are also coaches for mental health. I had a friend, she set up a company for women who had problems with their work, home, private balance life, how to balance it better out. And I think these things are in America, but maybe they're just a heck of a lot more expensive, and they're maybe only in the main cities. That could be, and then in the poor areas people can't pay them anymore. Like that could be that the fact that there's a bigger difference between the poorest and the richest, that's the reason why a lot of people can't get help, because I don't think we have that here as much. And I have to say there are still poor people here, and I think that group of people is just not as big percentage wise to how big it is in America. That's why, maybe there's still a group of people in the Netherlands that wouldn't be able to pay for a coach, but at least there's people who get help from the government, and they would be able to probably get out if they wanted to, or to some degree, or maybe at least make sure that their kids could get out of it. You know what I mean? It just doesn't feel like that in America. I don't know. I haven't heard that. Like, and again, I want to repeat this because I don't know a lot of things, and keep saying America. I noticed that I'm not. Should say the U.S., United States of America. I know that Canada and other parts of, the American continent isn't a part of it, and I should change my language. And also, I know that a lot of states are different. States are very different from each other. So maybe in some states this is already way better regulated than in other states, and that's just the weird thing. Like, I honestly find it hard to understand the American system and how it's set up, because it's so just. I feel like it's set up so weirdly, like, because it's literally the only country in the world that is not like originally a country. Like, it's a built country. It's a stolen country to some degree, right? Like, people just walked in there, and it's the only colony that's left in the world, basically, or one of the only colonies. Like, I mean, that has a really big effect on the way the country is built and the way that the states are literally created. Like, every country in Europe has a history of like 500 years or something, right? Like, and the people lived there for generations, for those generations. So there's so much history to the country and the people and the culture and all of it, and that's not in America. And I feel like that's a very big part of the not wanting to have a social system. And I'm here for myself, and I'm here gonna do it myself. I'm gonna solve my dream and my things, and fuck you if you have a shitty life. I don't give a shit. I'm here for myself, right? Like, there's not that whole family generation thing and feeling of like being a part of a society and a bigger thing. Like, I mean, even towards Europeans, I would say that I'm very, like, even to Germans, 50 years, 60 years ago, no, a little bit more, 80 years ago, where I still had the Second World War, man. But there's enough Germans here in Groningen studying, and we're friends. We don't have an issue with that whatsoever. You know what I mean? Or they understand it just as well, right? And we have that closeness, and within Europe generally, and just the historic background is a lot of, gives a lot of cultural society feeling of like, I want to do right, I want to do the right thing, I want to, if people in my society are doing bad, that's my responsibility. Like, it's my society, it's a part of my society, it's a part of my traditions and my ancestors, and if people are hurting, then that's bad, and I should help that, and that I don't think is in America as much as in Europe, because of the lack of cultural, historical background that hasn't been created, and that a lot of communities have to create it themselves, and maybe have created that over the last 100 years, and it makes sense that then you end up with a very tribal way of thinking, right? Because it's you still have to have that culture, and the culture still has to have cultural wars, because you don't have that, and I just think that's where all this come from. Like, there's no social system because there's no cultural background, history, feeling, and all different groups. Like if you come to the Netherlands, and I really advise you to, really, especially in Amsterdam, if you really want to see multicultural society functioning well together, go to Amsterdam, because I'm really surprised always when I come there. Really, like, it's really really nice, but it's also just crazy. Like, there's so many different people with different cultures and different backgrounds there, but because that's okay, and everybody wants to know their background. And there's a funny thing in the Netherlands a lot, and it's like when you so it just shows how much the fact of not being a racist is kind of integrated here in the culture by now. And it's like, for instance, if I have a friend that I meet, right, on a party or something, right, and it's obvious that he is, no, not that he is, but that that somewhere in his ancestry, right, the people that he comes from or is originated from weren't Dutch, let's say, right? That's obvious. Maybe it's his skin color, maybe it's something else, right? There can be something, right? But we find it very tricky to ask a question of like, oh, where do you come from? Like, that's not what you want to ask, because there are Dutch people born here, from immigrants, and then you're Dutch, so you're from here, so that's a very sensitive thing. I don't know if that's in America that sensitive, and I think it's also more because I come from the north of the Netherlands, and here we generally have, I think, a bigger, population of Dutch people who have Dutch ancestries, and that's why the question here, like, I think if you in the west of the Netherlands, I don't think that this question, like, people are way more used to it already than here in the north, and I had to deal with that. I made the mistake sometimes of asking someone like, oh, where do you come from, and then not meaning that, you know what I mean, like, and also, why does it matter? Like, this is just the whole thing in the Netherlands sometimes. And for me, like, sometimes it matters because I'm just interested. Like, and it can still be sensitive, but I don't think it generally is. Like, I genuinely want to know if you look different than me, right? And there might be the fact that you have a different culture than me. I really want to know, because fuck, like, other cultures are the best thing ever, because they might have found out shit that my ancestors haven't found out and that I can learn from, like, for instance, Arabic food, like, if you go to the Netherlands, the only thing you will find here is the fact that we stole food from other countries. Like, that's the one thing we're great at, really. Like, if you go to the Netherlands, don't expect to eat Dutch food. There is some Dutch food maybe in Amsterdam, but there's maybe one restaurant that sells it, because we generally are shit at cooking, I guess. Like, it's just not the same. I mean, we just never culturally learned to cook with spices, I guess, and now we kind of imported that from other countries, and just the food's just so much better. Yeah, really. Like, so don't expect Dutch food. Like, that's just a great example. Like, that's just such a big part of, So when I ask a person that, to me, might not look like his ancestry has all his ancestors were Dutch, right? If I ask him, where you come from, or what is your ancestry like, right? I ask that with the purpose of finding something there of value that my ancestry missed, because they made mistakes, man. They made mistakes. They missed spices. That's a really big mistake, and I think a lot of international people would agree with that. If you visit the Netherlands, you'll find out for yourself, man. We don't have a lot. We have other restaurants from, like, I mean, we have great Arabic restaurants, and but that's the thing, right? It's all imported. We don't have shit ourselves. We don't have that much shit ourselves at all. No. I'm trying to think of stuff. Stamppot, but that's like stroopwafels. I feel more maybe like snacks. Maybe that's more Dutch, I guess. But nah, not like an actual dinner or something. We just don't have that much. We have not, or maybe it's kind of forgotten in time, or maybe they just used to eat the same shit all over again. Like, I don't know. When I grew up, I was eating, like, from Asian foods at home, and macaroni and pizza and fried, like, like, stamppot was one of the dishes that we ate sometimes, but it's like more in the winter. Like, so it's like, I wouldn't even be able to say what is really Dutch food. That's just the weirdest thing about it, man. It's really, really weird. I really don't know. But, so, I think it was a good introduction of how I want to continue the podcast. I'm going to try to record 2 podcasts a week. And I hope to be talking about stuff like this and just expressing myself about whatever I'm thinking about at the moment. And especially to communicate a perspective from more of a European raised person. I don't know. I haven't seen it a lot on podcasts, especially in English language. I feel like a lot of European people who do podcasts do it in their own countries. Maybe I'm wrong. There's probably a gigantic community online of people, or European people doing English podcasts that I don't know about. It's always the case when you say something like this on YouTube, but there's a one comment being like, "Oh, here's why you're wrong," you know. But it's cool. I hope I'm wrong, at least. I really do, because it would be really cool to find a community of, other people who are motivated to bring more of a European perspective to the online community, because I really think we need to counter the 80% of content created in America kind of thing, because that just fucks up our own youth, man. Like maybe you're not the one that's on social media, right? Maybe your kids are, but come on, if America makes 80% of the content, then America is raising your kid. Don't think you're raising your kid. You're not raising your kid. They're on the phone for 2-3 hours a day. Maybe you teach them 2 hours a day, but God, man, those shit gets in their head all the time, And I really think we need to counter it with some fucking rational European leftist, type of stuff. Because in America, they think of left as as just different. They're so different as we do, And I feel like Europeans already, especially Nordic European countries, already have such more of a social system, and it's way more natural already for them, and that needs to start getting explained on the internet in the English language, so Americans start understanding, like, because if we don't do it, I don't think that they are, man. I don't think Americans can listen to Americans. I don't know why. I feel like they need to have a neutral party to help them to get to their political conflicts, and I feel like we as Europeans could be a big part of that. They're a really big part of our Western culture, and if they fall, we will also fall to some degree with them. So I really want to try to help there with whatever I can, in my free time, just having fun, and hopefully there will be some guests in the podcast along the way as well, But first, I just want to thank you. Maybe you watched the video, and thank you for watching. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you next time.